Hey guys, how you doing today? I'm doing my video inside today because I don't want to be outside. The cases are at 4,500 daily now. Um, I'm seeing the doctors of Ontario like taking to Twitter, taking to social media, and like being very outspoken about like the threadbare threshold that they find themselves at. Uh, we're being told to stay at home. So I am in a position where I can do that. So I am going to. I feel like everybody should. Uh, and what is like what definitely has happened over this weekend? The Washington Post released that article saying Doug Ford should resign, right? And this has sparked a great deal of support for that idea. It seems almost unanimous uh, that we should have Doug Ford resign over his incompetence and stupidity over this issue. It's become like a Game of Thrones kind of level issue, right? Like the drama is actually as heightened as it can be. So you have Doug Ford himself is like what I would like to do with this video is really like encapsulate things for people, so that people who are like, I don't get what's going on, like you can show them this video, hopefully. Like Doug Ford himself, I mean, his entire career has just been make money for the Fords, right? Like that's it. They're not intelligent. They don't have like an interest in helping anyone. Their interest is in personal power and personal glory, right? Like that's who they are. They're like the Lannisters. They're interested in personal power and personal glory for themselves. They don't care about the populace whatsoever. And the the NDP, like Andrea Horvath, she's been like steadily chugging along her like whole political career. Like she has been in this position that she has been in for decades. Like she is like a long time NDP leader, and she's currently the leader of the opposition, and she's polling at like 15%, while the Liberals, who just like put in Stephen Del Duca, their leader, like not that long ago, and who has been basically silent, basically like a no name. Nobody knows who this guy is. He's just completely an empty chair liberal. He gets 30%, right? And fundamentally, it's because liberals do understand how to capture the spirit of the populace, right? That it's an art taking the energy that exists in the populace and speaking it back to the populace in a way that is uh, uh, appealing to them, right? And so Stephen Del Duca, I've got these tweets right in front of me right here. He just makes a statement, and it sounds like it came out of my mouth. It sounded like it was something I wrote and put in front of him. Doug Ford is the worst premier in Ontario history at a time when leadership matters the most. He should resign now before he makes things any worse. If he does, I will be the first to commend him because it takes real guts to get out of the way when he's screwed up this badly. But he won't because he only cares about himself and his special friends. Like, that's it. You nailed it, right? Like, that's the seminal statement that's coming out of this. Like, who is this guy? Who is this guy? He just happens to be the leader of the Liberal Party, right? Like, and he's been basically silent this entire time, but now here he is like creating the culminating statement. And this is the thing that the NDP have been struggling with this entire time, right? They struggle with capturing the spirit of the energy of what it is. Like they try to catch conservatives in like a checkmate. They're trying to like outmaneuver them in terms of like, oh well, you won't even provide sick days or any of this kind of stuff, when they need to be coming out and they need to be making grand proclamations like Stephen Del Duca has here, right? They don't need to be saying like it's absurd that the conservatives won't even pass sick days, right? And again, the NDP just put up yet another yet another um, policy that the conservatives voted down, right? They're going to keep doing that over and over again. But they need to stop focusing on like a trying to like checkmate the conservatives or trying to show them as foolish, right? Because that game is over. We all agree the conservatives are foolish. We all agree. Like, now it's time to do what Stephen Del Duca has done, and it's time to start talking about them as if we all acknowledge that they are foolish, right? That's what the NDP need to be looking at now. That's what Andrea Horwath needs to be doing right now, is taking a look at what Stephen Del Duca has done and go, oh, okay, that's how we're talking now, right? Like, this is how we're communicating now. And you've even got it manifesting at the federal level. Jagmeet Singh has written a letter to to Justin Trudeau's Liberals, right, saying you should enact emergency powers and move into Ontario, right? This would be like a massive condemnation of Ford, who has already turned down aid from the Trudeau Liberals, right? The Trudeau Liberals have extended aid to him, and he's turned it down. You know, like blisteringly prideful and stupid move, right? And if the Trudeau Liberals were to actually enact emergency powers, it would be like a massive condemnation of the Ford conservatives. And they know that's the truth. If you're one of these people that ducks out of these videos around this time, thanks for coming. Please leave a like. Please leave a share. Please leave a subscription. We need to support leftist voices so that we don't get Doug Ford into power ever again, right? So that 15, 20 years down the road, when we've all forgotten about Doug Ford, idiots like me can remind everybody, hey, remember that sociopath who fucking killed a bunch of people for personal money? Right? Yeah, Doug Ford. Yeah, you want to vote for that again? Don't. And I say it over and over and over again, right? Like, while it's fascinating from a like Game of Thrones kind of politics, sort of everybody vying for power and vying for their own position politically, right? We are real people living on the ground, living with the impacts of this. The doctors and the nurses that are going through these situations are real people, right? Who have done everything they can and have done all of the right things in their life and are trying to do the best that they can to save lives. And they're confronted with this grotesque ideologue who is obviously a sociopath, right? And the thing that we need to be confronting is not even like, we're always going to have sociopaths attempting to seize power, right? But the question is, why do they have so much support in the populace? What is happening to us culturally that a man like Doug Ford still has 30% support in the populace, right? Like, that's terrifying. That's terrifying, right? Like, a man like Doug Ford, I'm like, yeah, those guys are always going to be in politics. Like, those guys are always going to be around, right? But here he is actively abandoning the populace, and 30% of the populace still supports him. That's staggering. That's a stunning figure to know. One out of every 4 people you talk to is supporting this death cult ridiculous behavior. It's insane. And how do we possibly deal with this nonsense? How do we possibly deal with the fallout of all of this, where we're being told, hey, you got to go to work, right, to make tacos or like make lattes for people, right? Like, give people toys, right? All of this nonsense. While the numbers are steadily climbing and steadily going up. Like, it's grotesque. It's absolutely grotesque. And we have to confront this massive cultural failing that has created a situation where 30% of the society is still in favor of this. Like, that's gross. Like, where's the articles on this? Where's the article saying, like, if you're voting conservative at this stage, like if you're even considering that supporting the conservatives at this stage, you're a bad person. Like, flat out. Full stop. You're a bad person. It doesn't we don't need to sugarcoat that. We don't need to be polite about that anymore, right? You're a real piece of shit, and you need to stop voting. You need to stop being part of the conversation. But of course, like, we're dealing with climate change deniers. We're dealing with death cultists, right? Like, we're dealing with people who absolutely have no problem sacrificing your life for their money. And how do we walk that back as a people? Like, how do we reverse that course? It's it, and while we are going through this absolute ridiculous nonsense, like, when we come out the other side of this, the doctors should take over. Like, they should, every single doctor and nurse should get into politics, and every single one of them should take over, and we should let them, right? We should let them. Because this absurd nonsense that we're telling people that they have to go deal with, like, pay people to stay home. Pay people to stay home. Oh, but if we do that, then the populace will realize, oh, wait a minute, we could have done this all, we could have always done this. We could have configured our society always like this. And if you do that, then nobody's going to sell themselves to billionaires to do all the work while they do nothing, right? Oh, man. What an absurd period of time. Like, what an absurd period of time. And what is it going to take? What is it going to take for us to really realize that, like, we cannot act this way? We cannot be this way. Like, we cannot be this way. What is it going to take? Because this is how we're acting when there's, like, a deadly disease in the midst of our society, right? This is how we're acting in the face of a deadly disease. This is exactly how we're going to act in when climate change starts to create food shortages, when climate change starts to create scarcity, when climate change starts to rear its head and really impact us in serious ways. This is how we will act. Where, like, frauds and liars like Doug Ford will exploit the populace for money for themselves while blaming everybody else and gaslighting everybody constantly. And they'll just deal with it when it becomes a major crisis, right? Like, this is my major critique of all of these politicians, like this Stephen Del Duca guy who's jumping in now to dump on Doug Ford. Where has he been? Like, someone like Andrea Horvath, she's been fighting this whole time, right? And good for her for doing it. But, like, Stephen Del Duca, now you're coming in and dunking on him? Like, no. Where have you been, buddy? Where have you been? Right? Like, and we got to get ahead of these sociopaths. Like, we got to get ahead of these sociopaths. We can't just, like, react to them. We need to look at these guys. Like, we knew Doug Ford was going to be like this. Anybody who has paid any attention to Doug Ford knew that he was going to be exactly like this. They didn't know he was going to be like this in the middle of a pandemic. But, like, he's generating crises for people, right? Which, like, for the majority of us, Doug Ford is a crisis, right? Like, he's created austerity against the poor. He cut the minimum wage. He cut access to education. All of these things, which means at the end of the day that we are kind of officially abandoned. Right? There's even rumblings that they're going to shut down the parliament sometime this week. Right? Make the abandonment official. Not that it would be much of a difference for how we live our lives, because Doug Ford wasn't doing anything in the first place. You're doing wonderfully out there with all of this. This is a ridiculous, absurd, collapsing society that we're living in, and you're doing wonderfully. I know you are. You're trying your hardest. You're doing your best. You're making good decisions for yourself. You're a divine being standing on divine energy, facing people who are spending billions of dollars to tell you otherwise. Don't let them. Good luck. We're gonna need it.